And the Indiana Fever have pulled off the upset, the 6th seed, beating Vegas 89-73 to take game 1.
The basketball world just witnessed the impossible. 2 minutes ago, news broke that has sent shockwaves through the entire WNBA community. The Indiana Fever, the 6th seed that nobody believed in, just walked into Las Vegas and absolutely demolished the 2-time defending champion Aces 89-73 in game 1 of the semifinals. But here's the kicker. This wasn't just any night. This was Aya Wilson's MVP celebration night in front of her home crowd. With championship banners hanging overhead. And yet, somehow, someway, the Indiana Fever turned what was supposed to be a coronation into their own coming out party. Everyone said they had no chance. ESPN analysts wrote them off completely. The odds makers were so confident in Vegas that they weren't even taking bets on whether Indiana could win. They were only betting on how badly they'd lose. Even the Aces themselves expected a gentleman's sweep. But what happened next will go down as one of the most stunning upsets in playoff history, and it all started with one player who refused to let her team be written off as a footnote. You have to
matchup, Aces Fever, game 1. We're not deciding the whole series right now, just game 1.
Should we do it together?
I think we should do it together because my spidey sense are telling me they might be the same. 3, 2, 1.
Aces.
They're not going to lose after she just won MVP.
Yeah, period.
There's no way.
I understand just how impossible this situation was for Indiana. When the series was announced, every single basketball expert painted the same picture. This would be short, predictable, and probably painful.
Indiana Fever had no business winning a playoff series this year, had no business advancing to the semifinals for the first time in a decade, and yet here they are, eliminating the Atlanta Dream.
To watch. ESPN panels didn't even bother pretending there was drama here. They labeled it a foregone conclusion. The betting odds were so lopsided.
In Atlanta, without Caitlin Clark, without Sophie Cunningham, without Sid Colson, without Aaron McDonald, without Chloe Bibby, the hospital squad is on the bench, and yet the Indiana Fever are into the semifinals of the WNBA playoff.
That Vegas sportsbooks found it easier to set lines on the Aces' margin of victory than to even consider Indiana might steal a game. The language surrounding this matchup told you everything. Headlines talked about survival, not victory. The subtext was crystal clear. If the Fever could just avoid complete humiliation.
And then the coaching of Stephanie White. Like, she is working with a 9-woman rotation, and 5 of those players did not even touch the court the last time the Fever played the Dream during the regular season, and 3 of those players weren't even on the team. Like, I cannot say it enough. The Indiana Fever should not be here. They continue to be here. They battle. They're resilient. It's wildly impressive. Caitlin Clark wore the black Air Force Ones again. They had one of those forces lifted in the air like a beacon of hope, and now they'll face...
Alone would count as a moral victory. But then the injury report came out, and even the most optimistic Fever fans started to lose hope. 6 players, 6 crucial pieces of their puzzle.
You actually just referenced it twice. It is Indiana. Dropped 2 of the 3 games to them this year, but you haven't seen them since late July. What excites you about that matchup?
That they haven't seen the real Aces yet. They caught us when we were at a bit in turmoil. Not only that, they whooped us one of those stretches. So, you know what? We'll buckle in, hone in where we can, and take care of business.
Sitting on the sideline in street clothes. Caitlin Clark, the rookie sensation who had electrified the league all season, was out. Sophie Cunningham, their defensive anchor, couldn't...
Respect everyone, fear no one. Doesn't a chance.
Oh. Sydney Colson, Chloe Bibby, Ari McDonald, Dyrus Dantas, all unavailable. This wasn't a playoff team anymore. This looked like a squad held together with athletic tape and pure desperation. The coaching challenge facing Stephanie White was almost laughable in its impossibility. She was working.
Dub. That's one. That's big time. That's big time.
With a 9-woman rotation where 5 players hadn't even touched the court the last time Indiana played Atlanta in the regular season. 3 of those players weren't even on the roster back then. Basketball analysts were literally saying on air that the Indiana Fever should not be in this position, should not have advanced this far, and yet here they were, somehow still standing, still fighting, still...
First semifinal appearance, just what's your emotional state right now?
Normal, I think. It's practice, trying to prepare like anybody else would, like any other day. But keep the main thing, that's all you can do.
Believing in something that nobody else could see. Meanwhile, Las Vegas was setting up what they thought would be a perfect night. Picture the scene. Championship banners draped throughout the arena, the crowd buzzing with anticipation for what felt like a guaranteed celebration. And then came the centerpiece moment. Aya Wilson, the newly crowned MVP, walking to center court to receive her trophy. The symbolism couldn't have been more perfect for Vegas. Their superstar being honored on the same night they'd begin another championship run. Indiana wasn't just the underdog in this scenario. They were practically invisible, backdrop characters in what was supposed to be Wilson's story. But here's what makes sports absolutely magical. Sometimes the script gets flipped in ways that nobody sees coming. Throughout history, we've seen teams written off before the first ball was even tipped. Squads that weren't supposed to belong on the same floor as their opponents. And you could feel those same parallels building as the Fever walked onto that court. This wasn't just the start of a playoff series for them. This was their one shot to prove they belonged, to announce that they weren't going anywhere quietly. By the time that final buzzer sounded, the entire narrative had cracked wide open. Wilson's MVP celebration suddenly felt like a distant memory because the Fever had stolen the spotlight completely. They walked out of Vegas with an 89-73 victory, their first semifinal win in almost 10 years, and left the entire basketball world staring in absolute disbelief. But the real shock wasn't just that they won. It was how one player turned that night into her own personal masterpiece. While everyone in the arena was focused on Aya Wilson raising that MVP trophy, Kelsey Mitchell was quietly preparing to flip this entire story upside down. It was supposed to be Wilson's night, the defending champions taking care of business at home, the narrative already written in permanent ink before the game even started. But Mitchell looked at all of that expectation and decided she had different plans entirely. She was going to turn this semifinal opener into her own statement game. And by the end of the night, everyone would be talking about what she had just accomplished. Mitchell has always been one of those players who gets respect, but never quite gets the spotlight. She's mentioned in the same breath as elite scorers, but always seems to come up as an afterthought when the big names get discussed. Coming into this series, all the pregame analysis focused on Wilson's continued dominance, whether Jackie Young and Chelsea Gray could overwhelm the depleted Fever roster, or if Indiana could even compete for 4 full quarters. Very few analysts were talking about Mitchell as the X factor who could completely change this matchup. That's been the story of her career, consistently proving people wrong by letting her performance speak louder than the expectations around her. And speak it did. Mitchell didn't just score that night. She scored in every way imaginable. Mid-range pull-ups when defenders fought through screens, deep threes when the Aces' rotations left her just a split second too late, and perfect execution at the free throw line, going 6 for 6 when the game was on the line. She was hitting shots from inside, outside, and everywhere in between, looking absolutely untouchable as the night progressed. By the time the final stats were tallied, Mitchell had erupted for 34 points on 12 of 23 shooting from the field, 4 of 6 from beyond the arc, and that perfect mark at the charity stripe. This wasn't just efficient basketball. This was relentless, methodical destruction of a championship defense. But here's what makes that 34-point explosion truly historic. No Indiana Fever player had scored more than 30 points in a playoff game since 2012. And in the entire history of the WNBA, no player had ever dropped that many points in their very first semifinal appearance. Mitchell's performance now sits alongside legends like Lauren Jackson and Cynthia Cooper in the record books, except she didn't just match their achievements. She broke their record. Think about the context here. In her postseason debut at this level, against the defending champions, under the bright lights of an MVP celebration, she carved her name into basketball history. Even her teammates watching from the sideline felt the magnitude of what they were witnessing. Caitlin Clark, the rookie phenom who had been sidelined by injury, had the perfect reaction that summed up what everyone was thinking. Just 2 words posted on social media: Kelsey, unreal. No long explanation needed, no elaborate praise. Just pure respect from one elite player recognizing greatness in another. That simple message showed how much Mitchell means to this team and how much her teammates understand the weight of what she had just accomplished. The symbolism of that night couldn't have been more powerful. On the same floor where Wilson was being crowned as the league's MVP, Mitchell was staking her own claim to greatness. It looked like she was sending a message to everyone watching. We've got a most valuable player too, and she's wearing fever red, blue, and gold. Those 34 points represented more than just individual excellence. They represented Indiana's complete refusal to accept a supporting role in someone else's story. The Fever weren't just winning because of Mitchell's explosion. They were discovering their identity through it. But this upset wasn't built on one player alone. While Mitchell was putting on her scoring clinic, the entire Indiana roster was executing a defensive game plan that nobody saw coming. Everyone expected Las Vegas to dominate inside the paint, to use their size, strength, and MVP-caliber talent to bully the undermanned Fever into submission. Instead, Indiana flipped that expectation completely, making defense and tempo their weapon in the one area almost nobody thought they could compete. The assignment that defined the night belonged to Aliyah Boston, and it was arguably one of the toughest defensive challenges you could imagine. Guard Aya Wilson. Wilson had just been named MVP for a reason. She thrives in the post, stretches defenders to uncomfortable positions, and attacks relentlessly from every angle. Most players shrink when given that kind of matchup pressure. Boston didn't. From the very first possession, she focused on being disruptive rather than trying to match Wilson shot for shot. Her approach was beautifully simple. Make Wilson uncomfortable, push her off her favorite spots, contest every catch, and force her to reset her offense over and over again. The strategy worked better than anyone could have predicted. Wilson still managed to produce 16 points and 13 rebounds, numbers that look respectable on paper, but the story was in her rhythm or lack thereof. She had to grind for every single bucket, settling for shots that lacked her usual flow and often working deep into the shot clock before finding her looks. That constant irritation slowed down the entire Aces offensive system, chipping away at the confidence of a team that usually thrives when Wilson dictates the pace and flow of the game. Boston didn't erase the MVP completely, but she made her look human, and sometimes that's all you need to swing a series. The supporting cast around Mitchell and Boston was equally impressive in their execution. Lexi Hull drew the assignment of guarding Jackie Young, one of the most difficult covers in the entire league, and she shadowed her on every cut, fought through every screen, and refused to bite on pump fakes all night long. Young never found the space she usually relies on to create her offense, and by the end of the game, her impact felt completely muted. But Hull didn't stop there. She knocked down clutch three-pointers when Indiana needed them most, proving that her effort wasn't just about stopping someone else, but about inspiring her own team's offense as well. Odyssey Sims brought a different kind of energy entirely, attacking Vegas defenders with fearless aggression on every possession. She wasn't afraid to take the ball straight at experienced offenders, splitting lanes and forcing the Aces into foul trouble throughout the night. Her drives completely changed the tempo of the game. Instead of Indiana playing cautious and slow, suddenly the pace was sped up, and Vegas, usually the team that dictates tempo, found themselves scrambling to keep up. Sims had them reacting instead of controlling, and that shift allowed the Fever defense to get set and locked in possession after possession. The dominance extended throughout the entire roster. Natasha Howard was steady all night, recording another double-double while staying active on the glass and protecting the lane on the defensive end. Brianna Turner might not have filled up the box score with flashy numbers, but her presence was unmistakable, altering shots with her length, walling up drivers, and making the paint a place the Aces couldn't just automatically own. When the final statistics were calculated, Indiana had outscored Las Vegas 50-38 in the paint, completely flipping what everyone assumed would be Vegas's biggest advantage into one of Indiana's greatest strengths. Even Aces coach Becky Hammond, never one to hand out compliments easily, had to admit after the game that they simply had no answers for what Indiana brought that night. Her acknowledgement wasn't just about Mitchell's scoring explosion. It was about Indiana winning every category that actually mattered: pace, defense, and urgency. That admission from a championship coach told the entire story. This wasn't luck, and it wasn't just one hot shooting night. This was a team that had established exactly how they could compete, frustrate, and ultimately defeat the defending champions. But here's where the story gets even more interesting. This is just game one of a best-of-5 series, and history tells us that only 28% of teams who lose the opener manage to come back and win the series. The Aces know these numbers. Their fans know these numbers. And they're all preparing for Game 2 like it's life or death for their championship hopes. For Indiana, the next 40 minutes represent the most important stretch of their entire season. Win again, and they go home with a commanding 2-0 lead and a chance to close out the series in front of their own crowd. Lose, and suddenly all that momentum evaporates. The series resets, and they're back to being the underdogs everyone expected them to be from the beginning. Championship teams have a different way of responding to adversity, and the Aces have been in this position before. They've faced early playoff setbacks in previous runs and managed to bounce back by making adjustments quicker than most teams can even identify what went wrong. That's their advantage. They know how to learn in hours what typically takes other teams weeks to figure out. They won't come out flat again. Aya Wilson especially will be hunting for redemption after being held in check. She doesn't like being contained, and you can bet Vegas will make it a priority to get her strong scoring positions right from the opening tip. Jackie Young, who struggled against Hull's smothering defense, will be looking to get loose on cuts and screens before the Fever defense can get set. And Becky Hammond has now seen exactly what worked for Indiana, which means her team will walk into Game 2 with a completely different game plan. The real question now becomes whether the Fever can handle success. This is uncharted territory for them. Winning as the underdog is one kind of pressure. Following it up with another victory when your opponent is throwing everything they have at you is an entirely different challenge. Can Kelsey Mitchell find that same shooting rhythm when the defense comes with traps and double teams specifically designed to take the ball out of her hands? Can Aliyah Boston keep Wilson uncomfortable for a second straight game, or will the MVP figure out how to break free? These aren't small challenges, and they'll define whether this was just a magical night or the beginning of something truly special.